someone that I have a ton of admiration. I have a ton of respect for. He's accomplished something that I set out to do. Didn't quite make it. We've done some great accomplishments, but Brian Zitin of Regora, he was actually one of the Forbes under 30, the 30 under 30 this year in 2020. I'm so excited to have him here. He is a visionary. He's a leader within our industry, and I'm very, very excited to have him. Brian, thank you so much for joining us this morning, man. Excited to have you on the Shred Show.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the kind words. The 40 under 40 is still there for you. You can hit that easy. So
there you go, dude. We're still, being 32, it's right there. It's within grasp, so we'll make it happen. And it's guys like you that I get to collaborate with that make it happen. So Brian, I'm excited to talk a little bit about you. And as we're starting to start this conversation, there's a lot of tech within our industry. There's a lot of collaborations going on, and we're going to get into those. But before we do, ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining us live, make sure you comment #shred if you are live with us right now, because that means you're shredding with me and Brian. You're hanging out with us live. And if you're joining us on the replay, make sure you comment #hustle, because you're out there, you're hustling. You're getting it done, then you're coming back here so you can get what you need to succeed within your business. So Brian, tell us a little bit about Brian. Tell us a little about how did you get started in the industry? You kind of have a tech background as well. Tell us kind of how you got started in this entire industry.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into it, to be honest. So the start of the company, I have a co-founder who basically my college roommate. We went to Boston University. The company's based here in Boston. That's where I am right now. And essentially, I worked at a commercial real estate brokerage, so big company called JLL. So I was like just an intern there, basically going into my senior year. And when we started the next, school year, my co-founder, who's the technical one, he's been coding since he's like 10 years old, sort of thing. We started our own brokerage, and so we basically used an algorithm to essentially get the contact info of like every single property owner in Massachusetts. So instead of the brokers who were like knocking on doors and cold calling, you could go send out emails programmatically to thousands of people. Hey, you want to sell your property? Hey, you want to sell your property? So my senior year, I actually sold like $5 million worth of properties doing that, which we had no business doing. Like we knew nothing about anything. We were just, happening to catch the guy who was moving to Florida, or the person who just died, that sort of thing. It's not super scalable to just be blasting out emails. You know what I mean? And we were providing like zero value to the transaction. So, but as we were doing that, showing properties, in walks the appraiser, who's this, done with a clipboard, super low tech. It was very manual. So that's when we kind of started discovering more about the appraisal process, learning about it. I started shadowing appraisers, got my PhD in appraisal just by literally talking to hundreds of appraisers, sort of thing. And when we graduated, we took the money that we made doing brokerage and kind of started Regora.
Nice. And now you're here at Regora and you're continuing to grow it. So tell us about Regora too, because a lot of people, when they hear the name Regora, I know when I first heard it, I was really excited and kind of heard it as you guys are truly, I don't want to say reinventing the wheel, but you're making things, you're changing things, you're adapting with times, and you are making things more simple and easy transactional wise when it comes to the appraisal process. So tell us a little bit about what Regora actually does within the appraisal space.
Yeah, so look, the appraisal stayed the same way for a long time, right? It's like appraisal in and of itself is not super sexy. There's not a ton of tech talent being attracted to appraisal necessarily. And so it's still this huge bottleneck. There's a lot of old legacy software that kind of plagues the whole process and all that sort of stuff. So in order to get to that, shining one-tap digital mortgage, 2-day appraisal, that sort of thing, what we're doing is providing vertical workflow software. So we provide software that plugs into the core systems of the lender. And I know we'll touch on that a little bit more, but things like the loan origination system, point of sale, things like that, and basically streamline the process A to Z for a lender, all the way from like literally automatically triggering an order to collecting the payment, to sending it out, to the Domino's pizza tracker of the status through the whole thing, through automated underwriting, basically making the appraisal better, faster, cheaper. And then over time, looking to turn the market in more of like an Uber sort of place, more than the kind of fragmented sort of process that we deal with today.
Which again is absolutely needed within our industry. Like you said, the entire appraisal space hasn't been changed in a long time. So now you have a company that is kind of trying to come in, trying to help, like you said, simplify it. It's not that they're trying to just say, hey, this is the old way is not working anymore, which that's arguable within itself, but there's a better way. There's a more simple way. There's I don't know if you want to say better in particular, but there's a way that can benefit everybody a little bit more. So when you first started coming up with that idea, when you first started, I guess, how did you see that the appraisal process was needing improvement? Did you go through something yourself? Did you just like, how did you actually see that this needed to be done?
It was literally just talking to people. So, we actually started off, like I said, I started talking to appraisers first. So we actually started with software just for the appraiser.
Hmm.
But then we learned that kind of the larger problem was actually the whole process, not just them creating a report sort of thing. And so same thing, we just started talking to a bunch of people in the banking industry. And I was lucky enough to kind of collaborate with a few local lenders here who are open to technology and that sort of thing. And just listening to people's problems and evolving from there. So now that I've talked to, dozens and dozens and dozens of departments and lenders and things like that, we kind of have a pretty built up good expertise. But in the beginning, it was really just like, hey, what problems do you want to get solved? We build technology, we can do it for you, sort of thing.
Nice. And now, like you said, you continue to innovate, you continue to do new things. And for the most part, everybody that I've talked to, the reception of this has been, has it been adopted overnight? No, you're continuing to do new things with it, continuing to grow it, continuing to show companies how integration, how collaboration can simplify this process, not only for us as industry professionals, but also for the consumer, which ultimately that's who we're trying to benefit. We're trying to make this process simpler, easier, faster, like you said, for the end consumer. And that's one of the things that I'm excited to talk about, because you have collaboration within our industry, especially when you have fintech. You have a lot of companies that, the shiny toy object, as I like to call it. There's always like, oh, hey, there's this new tech company that just popped up, and like, oh, they're doing this and this, and they're almost a distraction. But there's companies like Regora that are partnering with really big companies that are partnering with great, and not to say that Regora is continuing to grow, continuing to flourish, but there's these partnerships that are coming together, these collaborations that are coming together that are really turning heads. They're like, oh my gosh, like, these companies are working together to build a seamless process, a simple, a fast, like you said, a very, I guess, simplified mortgage transaction. Because we all know anybody who's bought a house, and it's getting better, but it's guys like yourself who have this vision, who are partnering with companies like Simple Nexus, who are partnering with other companies that are really taking this process and just making it so much simpler. So how did this, as you started to grow the companies, you start to put pieces together, how and why would you partner with a company like Simple Nexus? What benefit does that have to the industry?
It's a good question, because a lot of the time, especially for like appraisal, which is a specific kind of vertical, mortgage is so big. There's so many different moving parts to it, and everyone's kind of out there to do their own little part of it. But look, if you don't have, to your point of like, look, this is ultimately for the consumer, you need to be providing the consumer with like the optimal experience, and the people who are helping the consumers, like the loan officers and people like that. And so when we first got started, it was like, all right, how do we just make the appraisal flow better? But then as we learn more about what people care about, it's like, look, you need to connect all these systems. Like, you need to provide the word that you use, seamless journey from A to Z. So what we're doing that a lot of people aren't in that regard is partnering up. Yeah, like for example, Simple Nexus. So I'll give you a few examples. When people think of appraisal, they don't realize that collecting of that payment is an interaction that happens with the consumer. The loan officers need to know what's going on, like with the status of the appraisal. When is it getting scheduled? They can nudge the broker along to get that done, right? And so having that connection with a company like Simple Nexus, where we can do our appraisal thing, they can do their things that they're good at with the consumers and the loan officers and all of that, and have those systems talk well with one another, just provides a better experience overall for everyone involved.
Which that's what ultimately, having a better experience overall, that's what we're looking for. That's what, when companies see that opportunity to collaborate, to say, hey, you've got this product, I've got this product. If we put the two together, if we're able to collaborate and work together, ultimately, this is making the process a little bit more simple. This is making it easier on the consumer. Now, I know one of the things too, I don't want to completely change gears, but as Regora continues to grow, and one of the things that you guys have significantly helped with is turn times within the appraisal industry. That's one of the biggest things. Oh, your camera all of a sudden just like turned like clear. That's awesome. All of a sudden it's like, so,
all right,
see,
sweet.
little things when we're live. But so you guys have taken the actual process and the turn times, and you guys have started to chip away and have made the turn times drastically shorter than, what's the industry average for a turn time with appraisals right now?
Right now it's pretty crazy, right? Because like obviously insane demand,
Sure.
plus COVID and all that sort of stuff. We see turn times that are like literally over 2 weeks for a lot of folks, which is super long. I'd say in normal conditions, it's probably closer to, in that 7 to 14 range instead of like 14 days plus sort of thing. And some lenders even have it less than that. Like, the best in the world probably are around like 5 to 7 consistently sort of thing. But even that's really hard to maintain. And only in like really easy geographies. Like if you're in rural Maine, good luck. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but there's tons of things that people don't even realize contribute to that. So like, the example that I just gave you, tying it back to like Simple Nexus, right? The borrower gets the lender wants the borrower to pay for the appraisal most of the time before it goes long, so that in case they fall out, they don't have to get stuck eating the cost, right? And so let's say you send that email out to the borrower or whatever, white labeled through the point of sale sort of thing, and then they like miss it. Well, now the loan officer needs to be on top of that to go like nudge them and say, hey, by the way, you need to go pay for this, which can then initiate the appraisal. So that's just like another day or two of turn time right there, right? And so there's a couple things throughout that process, whether it comes to the scheduling of the inspection, finding the right appraiser in that kind of Uber style ability, right? Because this lender who's in this neighborhood doesn't know that this other lender may already have an appraiser in that neighborhood sort of thing. So just kind of tying all this efficient information along with some of these workflow things can help reduce turn times really by like 20, 30% just by cleaning up some basic processes. And eventually, like I said, the goal is to get to like just 2 days across the board sort of thing. And so, yeah.
That's insane to me to think about. I mean, and again, if anybody's in the industry, we know right now is a crazy time. Like interest rates are all-time lows, like demand is super high. So of course, certain times are going to be a little bit longer. But I've heard you talk about this before from when we originally met to interviews that you've done and just in general talking, getting down to a 2-day turn time across the board. Like that's insane. Could you imagine like living in a world where the appraisal it's because we've all been there, whether you're a real estate agent, whether you're a loan officer, we've all got that text from the agent or from the buyer who's like, how's the appraisal coming? When are we gonna get the appraisal? It's like it's one of those huge heartaches within the process, Brian. And people like, they want to know it. The appraisal itself has it's one of the biggest deciding factors of the entire loan process. If it doesn't appraise, so it's just a super, it can be super stressful. The fact that you can turn that down or really crank it down to 2 days across the board, and that's kind of your goal. And like, hey, this is very, very possible. That in itself, people should be like, hey, how can we help Regora grow? How can we help these collaborations continue to move forward? Because that helps us as industry professionals, as loan officers, that helps us ultimately make that transaction smoother for our consumers. And that's, again, as we mentioned before, that's really what this is all about, is making that transaction more seamless. And so I want to come back, and I know we kind of sidetracked there for a second, but these partnerships with a company like Simple Nexus, as Regora and Simple Nexus work together, and you kind of started to touch on this, but I really want to make sure that people understand, why does this partnership matter? What is this really bringing home, a Regora and Simple Nexus collaboration?
So definitely, obviously, kind of the things that we touched on in terms of like just a better experience for both the loan officers and the consumers when it comes to just transparency, ease of use, simplification, like you said. So that's just like a given, right? And so whether it's helping to recruit or retain your loan officers, more, or just providing that better experience. And there's a lot of like these hidden things. Like we wrote a whole blog about, people don't understand when you're really looking at like costs. Like it'll actually save you a lot of money. We have a big lender who you probably know, a lot of folks know. Before Regora, it was a mess in terms of they've got so many tickets per day of loan officers inquiring about the status of the appraisal. And so think about, if you're doing 50,000 loans, you're a big lender, you're doing 50,000 loans a year, and on every loan, your loan officers have to type up like a 5-minute email to various folks going back and forth. Hey, what's going on with this? Oh, I need you to do that, this. That adds up significantly and ends up costing you a bunch of money in terms of productivity and things like that. That's just one aspect of it. There's a bunch of hidden costs that people don't realize, that just by adding that kind of transparency and connectedness improves a ton of stuff across the board.
Dude, I love that you, as a recruiting tool as well, like you can use it with your loan officers. I know Simple Nexus, as they continue to evolve their platform, the communication tool that is integrated within it, and that's what you're referring to. If you're able to to make that transaction, if you're able to communicate with both the listing agent, the buying agent, your consumer, and the loan officer all in one place, so you're not having to type up that email. That takes time. I remember those emails when I was having to type up a big long email to everybody involved saying, hey, Brian, hey, here's where we're at, or how I had to get on the phone. If you're able to have a seamless conversation via, the Simple Nexus tool and app and have that conversation, and again, you guys are integrated into it as well. And I think I even heard that you can actually see within the app, within the Simple Nexus tool, you can see where the process is in Regora. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. The status, you can actually get the documents too. So let's say that, it finally, the appraisal does get completed, you're on the road or whatever. You can go right in there, pull up the appraisal right then and there instead of having to go into the LOS, go down into the files, whatever. So it just saves a bunch of things across the board.
Dude, that's brilliant. I remember the days where we'd have to go and search in the LOS and have to download it. And then dude, they're no more. And that's why it's so cool. That's why companies like Regora and Simple Nexus, as they partner, as they work together, making that seamless process that again, we've touched on this how many times today, Brian, but that's what you guys are so brilliant at, is that's what you see that is a broken system. You see that there is opportunity to improve. I don't know if we can say broken. I don't want to offend anybody, but there are so many opportunities for improvement. And that's where you and your team at Regora have really seen hey, you know what, guys, there's opportunity here. Let's go help this industry. Let's help them improve. Let's help them make turn times faster. Let's make it a cheaper, simpler process for everyone involved. And that's what you're doing, Brian.
Yeah, we try. Look, we still got a ways to go to 2-day appraisals, but we're going to get there. And in the meantime, there's a ton of things like you mentioned today that, there's an infinite amount of work that can be done just to improve things. So it never ends for sure.
It never ends. And it's guys like you who have that vision and who can actually see hey, we can get better every single day. Every appraisal that you guys do, every transaction that you help with, you can learn from, you can get better with, and ultimately you get the feedback of great industry professionals to really help you improve that process day in and day out. And like you said, what better time now than when we are booming, we're busting at the seams with transactions to really improve the process, to see where the holes are in the system and say, hey, you know what? Here's one of the choke points. Let's, as Regora, as our team, let's actually simplify this. We know we can help with this. We can help solve this and have a solution for it. So, dude, that's exciting.
Yeah, and no, that's a good point in terms of right now, because for any system that's under stress, which clearly you expose the weaknesses, and so appraisal is traditionally just that thing that was that's just how we do it, right? Whatever, we'll toughen it out. But now when you're dealing with 2x volume, you know what I mean? You can't just tough that out when you're dealing with all those challenges. So today, the time period that we're in, I think has exposed a lot of those weaknesses for a lot of folks and has made this sort of stuff more relevant. So COVID has been, a blessing and a curse in a lot of ways for a lot of different folks.
No, it really has been. And companies in our industry in particular, it has really shown some of our weaknesses and opportunities where there is improvement, or hey, we can improve on this. So what better time to be in a position that you guys are to be oh yeah, hey, you know what? We can improve here. We can make this process a bit easier, a little more cheaper, a little bit better. So it is an exciting time for companies like you and for companies like Simple Nexus to be working together and collaborating on. And that's why for me in particular, when I had the opportunity to talk to so many different people on the show and tech companies, and when we talk about these collaborations, that's what gets me at the soul of what we do, gets me really excited, because ultimately you can't have just one company that just does everything. You have to have great ideas and leaders come together, willing to share these ideas, willing to help one another and say, hey, you know what? You're really good at this. We're really good at this. Let's put two and two together and let's really help this industry continue to thrive and become better as a whole. That's what's exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. Totally. It's too big of a thing to tackle it all on your own. And so having those go-to partners in those various ways that you can kind of create that ideal tech stack with, and just this works. This is, it's always nice to kind of have that efficiency. And it requires kind of cross collaboration and bouncing ideas off of other folks and all that sort of stuff. So it's fun.
Nice. So I want to, as we kind of start wrapping things up here, Brian, you've mentioned one of the hopes and visions and where you're going to get is a 2-day turn time with appraisals, but anything else on the roadmap for you guys that you're really excited about? That I don't know if there's some things that maybe you can share, maybe you can't share, but there are some things with Regora that you're really excited about for the future?
There's definitely some things I can't share quite yet. There'll be some stuff coming out in a little bit, probably.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Brian, he's gonna get them. They're coming
later this year. Yeah. No, I mean, the things that we're focused on right now, we're kind of entering what we're calling phase two of Rigora.
Nice.
So in the beginning, right, you're building this kind of workflow software, and you do got to ask the customer a lot of things like what's your pain points, things like that. And then there comes a point where we could be doing that for the rest of our lives, right? But then you end up just building checkboxes and notifications and things like that. And so to really take it next level, you have to start doing experiments and things that may not work out, right? And so we're starting to play around with some cool things in that kind of Uber style mentality of like, well, what if we just turn this whole thing on its head and we don't even need to schedule something? They have a lockbox or, XYZ sort of situation. So there's a bunch of kind of cool experiment, especially with like the COVID virtual inspection flexibilities and stuff that's come out recently. I think that next year will actually be the time when a lot of cool appraisal kind of changes and disruptions happening. So we're excited to be on the forefront of all that.
Oh, that is exciting. For me, some people are watching this like, appraisals are not that exciting, but to us as professionals, they are, because we know what a pain point they have been in the past. So, and I love you saying, I think the horizon is bright for companies like you, companies like Simple Nexus, who are willing to innovate, who are willing to do things a little bit different, who are willing to push the envelope a little bit and try something new when everybody is like, no, the industry thinks so much inside this one little box. And they're like, no, the process we work for so long. But then you have guys like yourself and teams like yours that are willing to like look outside the box and think outside of it. And that's what I think. I 100% agree. I think 2021 is going to be a phenomenal year and really start to see some of these things that we've seen in 2020, some of these processes, some of these things and ideas that we're like, hey, we really can make these better. We can improve on these. And we're going to start seeing those implemented in 2021. It's an exciting time to be part of our industry, my man. I agree with you.
It is. Yeah, no, I got lucky in terms of just the timing when I slid in. Lots of change and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm excited.
Big things to come for sure. Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining us, for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing a little bit more about Rigora, sharing about the collaboration and partnership that you have with Simple Nexus. It is an exciting time for sure. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing a little bit about the simplification and the future that is the appraisal process. So thank you so much for joining us today, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Great to chat.
And you heard it directly from Brian, ladies and gentlemen. There are a lot more things to come from this company. You're going to want to stay tuned. Some big announcements, some things that are going to help all of us as professionals within the industry. You as consumers, you're going to want to stay tuned, because that's what we try to do here on the Shred Show, is bring you the best of the best, help you simplify the home buying process. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, we appreciate you. We love you. And now it's time for you to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. We'll see you guys. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Have a good one.